right now, and I've kind of talked before about how I am tired of Hassan. Like, not as a person personally, I'm fucking tired of everybody else talking about Hassan all the goddamn time. And part of it is that it's very obviously a distraction from the actual issues that he and the people who he is helping campaign for represent, the stories, the talking points they're putting forward, the focus they're putting on working class families and people that aren't able to fucking pay their bills and pay medical bills, like the common struggles of the American middle and lower classes. So there is a reason why so many people are trying to run interference right now for that, both on the Democrats and Republican side. And it's very fucking annoying, mostly because it is all serving as, because it's America, all serving as a very good distraction from actual human rights abuses happening right fucking now. For something a little bit less, and part of the reason why I'm annoyed at the constant fucking focus on Hassan is because it is intentionally an effort to, it's bread and circuses, ultimately. It's shit that is meant to take away focus from all of these issues, whether it's any number of genocides happening right now, whether it's any number of humanitarian violations like those happening in Cuba, whether it's the shit that is happening on our own front step, whether it's the surveillance state and Palantir and Waymo and all the fucking behind back closed door contracts being signed to sign away your rights, and in like so many things are happening right now that people should be so concerned with. And perhaps in America, none more so than the fact that we have right now active concentration camps in our country. Leaked video from men's ICE detention center, which, by the way, detention center is not the verbiage we should be using. There are certain things that I kind of, a little while ago, and this is why I say IOF instead of IDF, is because I straight up do not accept the framing that is given in the term Israeli Defense Force. What they are doing has nothing to do with defense. They are an occupying force. Is why I have also made the conscious effort to stop calling it the State of Israel, because I don't recognize the sanctity of it as a state. I think it is an illegitimate colonial project. It is the Israel project, the project of Israel, right? Similarly, I think we need to make a conscious effort to change the verbiage around the words detention facility. This is not a detention facility. They are not detaining dangerous criminals. They are not questioning them. They are not helping keep anybody safe. They're actively contributing to a system of brutality, rape, violation of men, women, and children. They are actively engaging in obfuscating efforts to find out how people are being moved, how many people are being trafficked, who is going where, and nobody is being held accountable. They are committing massive human rights violations on our soil with our taxpayer money to people who are our neighbors. And every time somebody uses the words detention center, it only serves to help legitimize that as something that is normal. It only serves to help legitimize it as something that isn't dehumanizing, but is in fact just a part of the system. It's just part of the bureaucracy. Leaked video from men's concentration camp. Detainees are coughing up blood. Quote, people have tuberculosis. I witnessed it working in the kitchen, he says. They lock them in punishment cells instead of the medical center. Conjunctivitis is spreading because 76 people are in one cell. There's a flu going around that never goes away because we're overcrowded. Video footage comes from inside the River Center ICE concentration camp in Faraday, Louisiana. This video is intended to reach health authorities and the media so that the reality of what we are all experiencing here is known. Adonis doesn't have an account on this platform, so posting first full-length and credited video here to help raise awareness. Oh, also reports there's a whole people of cell with conjunctivitis. So this is another part of, and I want to, with that as our kind of guide, this is something we've been keeping an eye on here. At Dead Domain, we've been keeping our eye on since the very first fucking days of the Trump administration, the efforts undertaken to harass, hurt, outright kill immigrant communities and people of color in America under this new fascist wave. A long time ago, I And I hate that I was right about this. I really do. Because at the time, I think I even said, like, God, this sound, I can't believe I'm saying this or thinking this. But that you're going to have instances like this where people get sick, because this is very similar to the shit that happened in like Soviet gulags. This is shit that happened in Nazi concentration camps. When a entire group of people is kept in low hygiene, intentionally in low hygiene, in cramped circumstances, if one person gets sick in an office, the entire office is at risk, right? And that's when people are not huddled into these cages like fucking animals, like a factory farm. So in what world do people who have poor food, no ability to bathe, no ability to regularly go to the bathroom properly, no ability to change their clothes, no ability to wash themselves, who are constantly getting sick, who have not proper medical care, of course, they are going to constantly be in a state of sickness, a state of ill health. That is what is currently happening. It's what's been happening for years now. Kurdish filmmaker recounts inhumane ICE force feeding. Gabar Choli tells of how for months he was shackled, pinned, and forcibly fed, and the physical and emotional scars the ordeal has left. This came out today. In June 2025, a sluggish and thin Gabar Choli with sunken temples and bones visible under his skin braced himself for the immigration detention center guards to charge into his cell once again. He was in solitary confinement in a medical cell inside the Port Isabel Service Processing Center, an Immigrations and Customs Enforcement camp in South Texas, where immigrants arrested in Trump's anti-immigration crackdown are detained. By the way, solitary confinement. I talk if you want just a brief glimpse at the intersectionality of all these struggles, and particularly how things like solitary confinement are torture, are psychological torture by any fucking measure. It is something that should be plainly banned and illegal. Watch my video on The Suffering 2, where I talk about the kind of historical context of racism that game covers and how that applies to today. So if you haven't checked out the video essay on The Suffering 2, that's one that also needs a lot more love. So add that to your watch later list to go check it out when you need like a podcast to listen to, because I think it's like, if I'm remembering right, it's like 2 hours long. Choli, a 40-year-old Kurdish asylum seeker with a thick beard and long dark hair, had been on hunger strike for over 2 months, demanding improved conditions for detained immigrants and to be released or deported. That day, his nose was swollen, his throat hurt, and he could still taste blood from previous days of treatment for which he never gave his consent. The filmmaker and activist for an independent Kurdistan had spoken out for the first time, talking exclusively to The Guardian last week from Canada about the ordeal in the United States that he said broke him. And as we read this, I need you to consider, and this is a fucked up way to frame this, and I understand that. But this is a story of somebody who got lucky. This is a story of somebody who isn't in the system anymore. This is the story of somebody who got out. And it is a story that is not shared by likely thousands of people. He recounted the vile routine as the detention center guards would rush towards him and wrestle him to the concrete cell floor, shackle his wrists and ankles, and drag him to the detention center infirmary. There, guards pinned him on a bed while medical staff forcibly inserted a feeding tube through his nose and down his throat and pumped nutritional liquid into his stomach. Choli was being force-fed by ICE. This is the kind of shit, by the way, this is almost verbatim what they do to make foie gras. Like, if you've ever heard about the inherent cruelty of foie gras, or if you don't know what that is, it is, I believe is it goose or duck? I think it's goose liver. Duck, or both. Duck or goose liver. It is, according to French law, blah, 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 blah. So what they do, and the reason why it's been, like, there's a lot of controversy around foie gras, is that for a long time, they would force feed animals to get them to swell, to make the liver more, like, lush and fucking, tasty or whatever. But it is regarded for the animal very often as torture. And there have been more humane methods that have tried to develop it because it's, a very well-known culinary dish. And, there's no need to inflict that much intentional suffering on an animal just to fucking eat it. But yeah, it's straight up not worth it. But we consider that for a moment. This is something that we judge as being inhumane and cruel to a fucking bird. And here they are doing it without a second thought or care in the world to a human being. An investigation by The Guardian based on dozens of pages of courts records and interview with medical and legal experts found that Choli was quietly and intermittently force-fed for nearly 8 months until he was deported in January. He was not alone. He even met a fellow hunger striker, an Afghan man The Guardian has also learned about, as they were both forcibly fed in the same facility. It's an excruciating and traumatizing process that has been widely condemned as torture. For Choli and others, refusing food is a last resort to protest against harsh conditions and lack of progress, but sometimes brings only harsher conditions. I understood the necessity of making a stand for what was right, Choli said, speaking by phone with The Guardian, talking in a very matter-of-fact way about his most recent experience. At various times, he would sarcastically chuckle, almost incredulous now when remembering the officials' actions. Quote, "I was respectful. I just told them I am protesting for humane treatment, nothing else, but they were determined to break me." Somebody going through a hunger strike, a real hunger strike, because I don't think most people cannot comprehend, certainly not the average American mind, cannot comprehend the amount of conviction it fucking takes to starve yourself. This is not skipping a couple meals. This is not fucking going on Weight Watchers. They're not doing it for Atkins. You understand? This is going days, sometimes weeks. Watching your own body fade and wither away. It is the kind of sacrifice that most Americans cannot think of. They cannot contemplate because it would be so inconvenient. To put yourself in a state of prolonged torture, willfully, not just for yourself, but to call attention to the plight of others. To willfully embark on something that could very easily end with you dead. To call attention to the plight and how it is affecting others. To me, this man is 10 times the fucking valorous hero that anybody in ICE ever fucking will be. You will never see a single ICE agent. You will never see one of those fuckhead Paul Blart mall cop wannabe motherfuckers sacrificing themselves or putting themselves on any kind of line like this. The fact that we as a society have decided that, yeah, we have politicians right now trying to convince you that ICE agents they're heroes. They're doing what needs to be done. Is unconscionable and is yet another example of how fucking ass backwards everything in society is right now. I understood the necessity of making a stand for what was right. At various times, Choli would sarcastically chuckle. He suffered swollen sinuses, damaged esophagus, stomach problems, and psychological torment, according to court records. Quote, "It just broke me, mentally broke me. After sometimes twice daily sessions, they would take me to a solitary cell and I would choke on my blood and drink the blood from inside my throat." He said, describing how the feeding tube would scrape him inside. If you've ever had to have a feeding tube or if you've ever been intubated for any kind of surgery, you have, and again, you have a small, brief glimpse into the physical discomfort and torture. It is, getting a tube put down your throat is wildly unfucking comfortable. Having it shoved down there by people who don't care if you live or die, by these ICE fucks who sign up so they can torture people. This isn't like a fucking dental procedure. This isn't like being put under for surgery. This isn't by doctors acting in your best interest. These are hired state torturers. The Trump ad man has not officially acknowledged force feeding, but an investigation found that since 2025, the admin used court orders and plans to subject at least 10 hunger strikes to involuntary medical procedures, including force feeding. DHS did not respond to questions about Choli's specific case, but a spokesperson said in a statement, quote, ICE respects individuals' rights to refuse medical treatment where appropriate. However, when an individual's medical condition presents a serious risk of death or permanent harm, or other compelling legal or operational interests are implicated, ICE may seek judicial authorization for appropriate medical interventions consistent with applicable law. Any involuntary medical treatment is undertaken only pursuant to legal authority and under the direction of qualified medical professionals. End quote. I'm going to call fucking bullshit on that. I'm going to call bullshit. What they're actually doing is trying to keep them alive because a lot of these ICE facilities, and this is, again, maybe a little bit of conspiratizing here. I cannot prove this. But I'm going to, before I say that, I want to put that out there. I can't prove this as a fact. My theory, though, is that because a lot of these ICE facilities are basically paid by the head. So if you don't know, this is from just 2 days ago on NPR. Private prisons announced $1.4 billion in revenue as immigration detentions climb, because a lot of the facilities and concentration camps were holding people at, and again, this is all kind of detailed in the video on The Suffering 2, which if you go on my channel, it's titled The Most Disturbing Game on PlayStation 2, because I had to give it a little bit of clickbait. But I talk about the prison industrial complex and how that has spread over time to be just straight up a for-profit endeavor. Like, there are entire lobbying groups out there dedicated to shit like this so that people can make money off of people being interned in these camps. So the reason why they would want to keep people alive is A, to avoid the PR of seeing people dead in the camps. B, they get paid. The more people they have to take care of, the more federal funding they get. Earnings from April through June come as the U.S. is holding almost 66,000 people in immigration detention, nearing record levels not seen since January. This was accompanied in part by lowering operating costs, meaning the business of detaining people is becoming cheaper and because of more people being put in detention. CoreCivic's sales of detention centers to the government won't be reflected until next quarter, but they're part of a larger strategy to meet Trump's goal of having 100,000 people in detention at once. GEO Group George Zoli said in his company's earnings call also on Thursday that thanks to 2025 contracts, which your contracts is, again, that's a way of saying that the federal government is paying them to hold human beings prisoner in these concentration camps. Total revenues are up $732.1 million, an increase of nearly $96 million over the same period last year. GEO Group's government ties run deep. No shit. David Ventura is the acting director of ICE, former executive. No shit. A recent letter, he told lawmakers he had divested. Bullshit. Whatever. President Trump also has financial stakes in the two companies. Would you fucking believe it? So anyway, my little conspiracy theory, but just call it a fucking hunch. Quote, this likely amounts to torture, said Dr. Chanel Diaz, an assistant professor of medicine at Columbia in New York. Diaz has medically evaluated other ICE force-feeding cases and advocated for hunger strikes released. She reviewed the limited court records at the Guardian's request. Quote, I would say it's difficult to capture the degree of risk he was being put at long term. He was first sent to the Desert View Annex in Cali, an immigration concentration camp that had been repeatedly criticized for substandard conditions. While in detention, he was pressured by ICE officials to sign a deportation order to be sent to Iran. He refused, and after demanding better conditions, he began his hunger strike on 24th of March. Quote, I am not suicidal, he would later write to a judge. I am using hunger strike as the only available option to protest the abuse and mistreatment. He was then transferred to a privately run Port Isabel facility in Texas for a higher level of medical care. By the way, one of the reasons why they love to use for-profit prisons is for-profit prisons are not bound by the same fucking laws and regulations that necessitate quality care of inmates. In fact, they're usually a lot fucking cheaper and worse about it. Almost 10 days later, ICE sought their first court order to force feed him. He broke his strike, believing the federal court's involvement would help his immigration case move along. Quote, God opened a door for me. He said he was thinking and wrote a letter to the judge requesting assistance. But 3 weeks later, he learned the case was closed and no one had responded to his letter. Furious, he stopped accepting meals again. On May 23rd, ICE and U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Texas filed a second request for a court order to conduct involuntary medical procedures, including force feeding. As his hunger strike went on, it threatened his health and also, in the government's opinion, posed a, quote, serious threat to security and good order of the facility. The public interest is served by not allowing his attempts to manipulate the immigration system and by maintaining prison and inmate safety and security. What they're saying there is if somebody died, again, if somebody died, it's a real bad look. It's a bad look. Everybody's gonna take a hit to the morale. Quote, immigration detention is civil. It is not necessary, Diaz said, referring to the fact that many alleged immigration violations, such as remaining in the U.S. without legal status, involve civil, not criminal law. She said the ICE's court arguments, quote, feel like a false dichotomy, adding that detained immigrants, quote, could be released. That is always a choice, and that should be the default, not force feeding. And again, consider for a moment, taxpayer dollars, instead of having these people who work jobs, who contribute to the local economy, who help make the world and life better for everybody. And the United States government has decided that instead of having those people as part of your community, everybody is somehow better served by having you pay for them to be tortured like this. That's taxpayer money is going to this right now. Right now. This isn't just a one and done thing in one part of the country. Every day, every hour, some shit like this is happening. During the first days of his force feeding, his nose and throat were swollen from the repeated tube insertions and removals. He recalled an occasion in which, while being restrained, an ICE nurse shoved the tube so hard he tore my nose from the inside. His nose bled for days. The rapid administration of nutrients, which, by the way, also it's fucking insane that anybody is trying to say that, oh, well, yeah, we're doing this in accordance with good medical procedure. When, like, if somebody's starving, it is, there are medical procedures to help them get the nutrients to their body in a healthy way that will not overdose them because their body is not accepting nutrients. Like there have been stories of people who are starved on the verge of death, emaciated, and they eat too much and they fucking die because their body literally cannot handle it. So the idea of just fucking force feeding them like a goose. The rapid administration of nutrients after Choli had been starved himself also triggered stomach problems. During one early session in last June, Choli said he immediately had diarrhea. He was then taken to a cell with no toilet, where he further defecated on himself. I kept looking at my soiled body and clothing and went on crying. I cried for being objectified and inhumanely treated, for seeking a humane treatment. Weeks passed, and Olvera, the judge, continued to extend the force-feeding order. With swollen sinuses, presented his declaration to the court at one hearing in mid-June, telling Olvera he could not afford a lawyer and requested a court-appointed attorney. Olvera denied his request, writing in his court order that attorneys are not guaranteed in civil proceedings, and that even if he had one, it would be of no use. He would continue to grant force-feeding orders. The twice-daily process became a grim routine. Weeks turned to months. At one point, he recalled a guard's rough treatment, injuring his ribs, making breathing painful for weeks. At another, guards who were restraining him pressed so hard on my shoulder I thought my chest was going to break in half. I lost my breath, and he heard the doctor say, "Take him to the hospital, he's dead." Then I completely went out, Choli said in an interview. In Choli's case, where he was force-fed for 8 months, you're looking at easily over 100 NG tube placements, possibly over 200. That is just not medical care, that is torture, Diaz said, referring to nasogastric tubing. ICE finally deported him on January 6th of this year, where he reunited with his siblings. He told The Guardian how the next day he nervously ate his first solid meal, a simple, small salad. He was fine, but his jaw hurt for days. It may sound strange, but I had to learn how to eat again. He is still struggling today physically and mentally, but hopes that speaking out may help others in ICE detention. Does he blame Trump? Quote, Trump is just one person, indicating his problem is with the broader treatment of immigrants and refugees. He is not here torturing me. That's right. That's fucking dead on. The idea of a man going through all of that and having the clarity to say that, the understanding to say that, is fucking mind-blowing to me. Because I think being in the heart of darkness like that, I think you would have a hard time not seeing shit clearly. Not understanding that the people doing this to you are part of a larger system of oppression and torture. Somebody brought up earlier, do you know who else? This is not just Trump. Do you know who else helps fund this shit? Democrats. Who helped fund the ICE budget that allows for this, massive expansion, that allows for them bringing on more fucking trained, hired killers? From the ohioimmigrant.org, this is the last ICE story we're going to be talking about, because, and again, after what we just read, I want to double underline that for all the inhumane treatment that literally no human being should ever have to fucking go through, Choli is out of the system. He is living with family. He is living far away from this mess, while thousands, hundreds of other people are not. And as is often the case with oppression, the people who are victimized most are children and women. And their stories have been heard far, far less. The things that are happening, the things we will uncover, and I talked about it, I think it was the beginning of not even this year, last year, where I said we are going to get an Abu Ghraib level scandal out of this. And we've gotten several. And the really fucked up part, I don't think we've seen anywhere close to the worst of it. Not worst as in stuff that is yet to come. Shit that has already happened, and nobody's talked about it. This is a new report of 59 criminal ICE and Border Patrol agents. 85 committed sex offenses, nearly 2/3 against children. Now, this is a really hard thing to keep track of because, and I'm willing to bet this is partially why, a lot of information on ICE agents is really hard to track down. They don't want these people being doxxed. They don't want people knowing where they live. The people who are torturing, murdering, killing, raping, trafficking your fellow man. No. They don't want them to know where they live, where they lay their heads at night, where you can let them know how you feel about the inhumane treatment they are delivering to your fellow fucking citizen. Ohio Immigrant Alliance released the They Walk Among Us, a list of 59 sexually and physically abusive ICE and border agents in the wake of ICE agent David Bruliette's killing of Johann Sebastian in Maine. David Bruliette's disturbing history of domestic violence is not unusual for an ICE agent, said Lynn Tremonte, executive director of the Ohio Immigrant Alliance and author of this report. Quote, but we have no way of knowing the full extent of the problem because the agency doesn't even look at family court records. What we do know is that ICE and Border Patrol agents have a disturbing track record of sexually and violently abusing women and children, including members of their own family. These are not people who should be given guns and free rein to roam our communities. Their job is to enforce civil laws, but they act like they live in the Wild West and are killing people in our streets. Congress has to stop writing blank checks to these agencies and start enforcing order and accountability. Now, this is, by the way, not talking about, because I have said, again, for over a year at this point, I've talked about how these places are going to become just hunting grounds for fucking predators. The people who are already willing and ready to victimize people in their own fucking life, their family members, their friends, their loved ones. And here you are giving them absolute unaccountability to torture, to hurt, to do any number of things to people. This is what is happening right now in America with your money. And as people, and the reason I brought up fucking Hassan at the beginning of this is that these are the things that they do not want you to focus on. They don't want you to focus on the fact that ICE continue killing people. They don't want you to focus on the fact that after Renee Good, after Alex Preddy, where is the fire that there was then? They've killed more people since then. But like every other aspect, every other fucking disaster that comes across our feeds, it is constantly compartmentalized so that we accept it as a new kind of normal. It keeps happening and happening and happening. And each time it stops being a tragedy. It stops being something preventable. It stops being something that we shouldn't expect from a civil society. And it inches closer and closer and closer and closer to being a new normal. Until one day, this is just the world we fucking wake up and live in. And I find that unacceptable.